Guys, look at this thing that happened in Abuja, Kuje prison. You know, see,
The
sometimes you say what?
the prison break.
Yes.
You mean the American Prison Break season movie?
The American Prison Break.
This is.
See, there are things going on in Nigeria that you look at and you're not in government. You feel so helpless, right? To even think about, to wrap your head around. How can a facility that is housing very serious criminals of a country allow such a thing to happen?
Yep.
With all the intelligence that is supposed to be at the disposal of the government, at the disposal of the particular authorities that should be in charge of those prisons. I mean, if nothing else, if not for anything, for the fact that it is housing dangerous, serious criminals. If it was a prison for just petty crimes, I can understand. Do you understand what I don't know? Did you guys read about the news?
Yeah, I did listen. I mean, I do listen to Nigerian news, and it's disheartening because it's not a first occurrence. There have been in the last couple of years, there's been a number of events and working facilities, and I think people are most concerned about this because it's happened in Abuja, and the specific, nature of criminals in question is something that should worry anyone who lives in Nigeria, considering that these are terrorists, people charged with terrorism. So, I mean, I would imagine this would be the highest level of crime. And having these people who should be confined loose should worry anybody living in Nigeria, even across the borders. So I did hear it, and of course, there is a lot to ponder, and there is a lot to interrogate about this. I don't know what you think. Mr. Dag, did you get that news?
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need to watch the news to hear this one. As long as you're on social media, I'm on Twitter, and I woke up one morning like 4 days ago, and everyone was talking about ongoing attack, and these guys kind of, operated for almost 3 hours. Nobody stopped them. People who live nearby, we are tweeting and showing videos and the sound gunshots and for hours, and nothing happened. So the Minister of Interior, Obeni Rauf Arebeshola, he said, that this
guy.
said that this facility is medium by size only, that is a maximum security prison. That's what the minister himself said. And how there are police, there are elite police, that's the word he used. There are well-trained and well-armed army. There's the correctional facility guys who are also well-armed. Then there's civil defense. So he mentioned about 3 or 4 or maybe 5 different, armed forces out there, and that it is a well-guarded place. And so the only thing I just take out from there, Nigerians, we don't trust, official statements. We don't believe these people. So I think that maybe he has allocated so much money to that place, and they've eaten it, they've corruption-wise, and they just want to say this because it doesn't make sense, right? Boko Haram has bested our forces at every level for years now. Also, again, and that thing also is to think about the fact that, there's report about in Yola Correctional Facility, where a former Boko Haram, member is now a staffer, and this guy is still there. So you wonder if these guys have infiltrated us and they gather intelligence. And then again, I don't know if it's conspiracy theory, but people believe that, is a prisoner exchange / kidnapper exchange. That's the best way. That was the best the government could come up with, because the Boko Haram guys have been asking for for some of their members to be released, and then they had the Kaduna train attack, kidnap victims. So it kind of used it to swap, those people. But at the end of the day, 5 people died at least, according to official reports, and some of them were, innocent prison staff or people who were security people who were just trying to do their job. So, and again, people really lived very close to that facility. Nnamdi Azikiwe Airport, 24 minutes drive. Aso Rock, less than an hour away. So it's a movie, right? I mean, if you live around there within that area, you'll be asking yourself questions like, what am I even doing here? Am I safe? You second guess yourself. So then coupled with what you guys have said about all the attacks that have happened in the last few years. In fact, last year alone, I can see about 8 prison breaks. Kuje was also in that list. Jos prison, Owerri prison, everywhere.
I think there was one in in Edo State. I think so. Last year, right?
One. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called Abolongo prison.
Abolongo prison.
So that's Oyo State, actually.
I didn't even know about it.
Ubiaja is the Edo State prison. Yeah. Ubiaja prison. Yeah. So yeah, it happened April 14, 2021. So Owerri prison last year, Bauchi prison last year, Ubiaja Edo last year, Kumawa, Kano, Jos.
So you would think that we would have learned a lot. I mean, the prison system or Nigerian correctional, I think it's called Nigerian Correctional Service.
Frankly, yes, it is.
Right. It's one department of government, one unit. So it's not like you have different states under different organizations.
Yeah. Just
you have
government.
You have one organ of the prison system. So you would think that we would have learned a lot, about prison breaks, about what's going on, with the security of prisoners and, prison officers, security of prisons in general. But apparently not so. You see, my problem is it's not even because these things happen, because one government official will come up tomorrow and say, there was, even in the US, you have prison breaks, or even in, so in South Korea, you have prison breaks, That's not the problem. My problem isn't that these things are happening. They're happening too many times. And the response that follows, these things happening, is usually hilarious. Always the same. Always the same throwing out of words. You find government officials, they just throw out words. They just throw out words. It's like the president will say something like they should expect the full weight of the government, the straightest possible.
I like the one that used to say, the long arms of the law will.
You see, if we even have to put everything in context, think about it. One of the frontline election campaign promises that brought this government to power was security. And thinking about that, we've had the worst security situation in my own living memory, and I guess those senior to me will attest to the same. It's it's ridiculous, and it's just a paradox. The more you look, the less you see. It's obvious that no one has faith in this government, and people don't take what they say seriously because they have been proven to be they've proven not to be honest about anything. So I believe if a government official tells you stay here, that you're going to leave because this person is lying.
But wait, let me ask you: Do you think it's that they are not honest, or that they are honest? They actually want to do something, but they are just incompetent.
Well, I think it's an admixture of of both and a few other things. They are incompetent, they are not honest, and they are disingenuous. I think it's you cannot think this government is honest. Having broken every promise you have made, there is no other way that judge your honesty than this. I can't remember any campaign promise that's been delivered. I can't. And I have the present government manifesto here on my system that I can project if we want to see all of them. So there is none. And, there is no way to believe them. No. And think about also the other element of incompetence. Former governor of New York, he was reputed to have quoted that you campaign in prose and govern in
no, you campaign in poetry.
You campaign in poetry and govern in prose. Right. These people who campaign in poetry, they are governing in poetry. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. It's just a question of time, and the time is right. We've all seen their level of incompetence. I know we're discussing the correctional facility, which I think we're going to come back. Even thinking that the education system, which they promised to fund, which is also one of the frontline events, campaign promise that brought them to power, has been an industrial action for months.
Did they campaign on education?
Of course, they said they were going to increase budget for education from where it was before. Security education, it was one of the things. I mean, the manifesto is here. Thinking that these guys, the higher education has been on strike in the past couple of months, and they are campaigning. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. Yeah. How could you? Anyway.
So,
yeah.
Do you think that anybody will be held responsible, or anyone has been held responsible for what happened? And I also saw a Vanguard report that says that soldiers were moved from their position 24 hours to the attack. Have you had anything
some sort of connivance?
Yeah.
Well, to be honest with you, I won't because of how disingenuous and dishonest this government is. I won't hold brief for them. I won't. I will always take anything I hear from both mainstream and non-mainstream with a pinch of salt. But thinking about things that have happened in the past, there is some evidence, or there is some reason to believe. First of all, I remember former President Jonathan. He was he said a number of times that there was Boko Haram in his government, and we understand what that means. So there could be fifth columnists. It happens in governments around the world. And thinking of what has been happening in Nigeria, I think it would be naive to think such is not happening.
But then, isn't it? If that happens, isn't it on the president to make sure that people surrounding him, at least in the executive arm of the government, are people that you can trust, people that he trusts? The president's men.
But this president doesn't look like he's interested in anything.
This is a concern. This is a thing.
He wants anything that he wants. What he wants are the things that have to do with travel. Once there's a foreign, yes, that's one. Either his medical checkup, or once there's an economic forum. They even do our own Nigerian, forum. They just take it to Dubai or take it to somewhere else.
I'm surprised Nigeria doesn't have an airline under this guy, because he seems to like flying.
It's scary because again, human lives are being extinguished every day. What do you want to talk about? Which week of this year have we not seen some form of bloodshed, whether it's in the north or the east, or soldiers killing people? Was it not last week again or this week that there was another accidental bombing in the north? So It's tiring. Like, and then again, because when someone said, "Oh, soldiers were moved from the location 24 hours," you now want to be a bit reasonable. At the same time, you don't believe the government, but the way Nigeria has treated you or the way things have been handled in the past, you don't know what is true. So almost all information is diffused like gossip or like conspiracy theory, so you don't know what is true and what is not true. So you start trying
And
to
because
get...
the government doesn't really come out with its own official position, properly organized
through the right
information,
channel.
concise.
Yeah.
You understand? Through the right channels. Because that doesn't happen. You leave people to their own different interpretations. And see, it's not even just Buhari's government. It also happened in the last government.
Yeah. But yeah.
I think for me, I was of course very much younger when Obasanjo was the president, but I can remember that I enjoyed his information team.
Yeah.
Frank Wike.
Frank
Wike, Chika, I think his name was Chika Chikelu, something like that. Oluremi Oyo, people like that. They were people who disseminate communication from government. Of course, there will be propaganda inside it. There will be lies and all that, but at least the government had a message, that it will give its citizens. It was clear. The official positions were always clear.
Don't we have Lai Mohammed?
This brings back what I said about campaigning in poetry and governing in
prose.
So
I think Lai. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Lai Mohammed has been missing in action lately. I don't know if you guys have observed it. It's just I don't know where he's been.
Yeah, I haven't really heard his voice.
Yeah, he was good at his propaganda, job, but you don't govern with propaganda. You don't.
Yeah.
It's just a question of time. People will audit the things he say and make a fool of.
But I don't know. I respect his audacity. He really tried to
he does.
Blatant lies. Like the guy tried to.
When? During the campaigns?
No, every time. Earlier
in the administration, he tried to just say ridiculous things.
He was so brazen in the way he said things that were brazenly, clear that they were lies. He couldn't be bothered, and he would double down. This is, to be honest, I sometimes I imagine whether this guy goes back home and laughs at the things he says, or he had I don't know how he manages to deal with the things he said. Anyway, you talked about taking responsibility, for what happened. We don't take responsibility in Nigeria, and there are litany of events to demonstrate that people are not reprimanded for their shortcomings. I remember when Obasanjo was there. Let's start with the former Inspector General of Police, Tafa Balogun.
Is it Tafa Balogun? Okay.
He was a classical example that the state could, with its heavy arm, if you fall foul of the law. And there were also a couple of other examples who, people, high-profile persons, by the way, who were punished for falling foul. But
it's just like he chose. I think Obasanjo's problem would be that he would choose the people that would that will get the heavy arm of the law.
But symbolically, it's also send a message that you could be punished. But here, in this current regime, we don't see anything like that. People even get pardoned, after being sent to prison or correctional facility. So I think it's just a mess. It's a joke. And it doesn't show any seriousness on our part, because what makes a society is is respect to the rule of law. And if you could see in Nigeria, there is no respect to the rule of law. People do things and get away with it because the law doesn't wield its long, heavy arm of people. And there are cases to show that. So, sociologists makes us understand that people don't obey laws because they want to, but because they could be punished if they are found wanting. But in our case, nobody's punished. So these things recur. For example, the Abuja train saga or train kidnapping issue.
Abuja, the Abuja Kaduna one.
Abuja Kaduna,
Okay.
issue that was on the news months ago.
Yeah.
The Minister of Transport, I recall, just a few days after he went running in, was it in Port Harcourt, to declare his intention to run for the president of Nigeria, seemingly remorseless of what has happened under his office. It shows you how brazen and disappointing our leaders are. And if people know that the office they hold is dignified and they could lose it, and if they think it matters to them, then they will do everything within their ambits to make sure that nothing goes wrong. But, the event happened and it was just like nothing happened and life continued. I think Nigerians are now immune against disaster. We just feel like it's okay.
We're desensitized.
I think that's the right word. So
we're desensitized because people will come to you and to campaign, and the only thing you do is to hail them. I mean, people genuinely hail you. So it's not like they're hailing you because of what they can get from you. They're hailing you because because they really like you. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the country. It doesn't matter what you hear. In fact, you have people who say, but the problem was there before he came. But then that's why you elect a government, Abi. That's why you elect a president.
Exactly.
To solve the problems that were there, and also make sure that he solves the problems, that will originate, that will arise during his government, and to make sure that he has the vision to see far away, to put things in place to solve the problems that are going to come in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you can see the tweet put out by Buhari. I guess it was put out by a media aide. Says, "I am highly disappointed in the intelligence."
But the problem is now to ask that question: how can you have? It's ridiculous. How can you have security services, blah blah blah? I'm paraphrasing now, and terrorists will come and break into a prison and do this kind of thing that they did. Mr. President, you're asking the citizens that you're supposed to be working. You're asking us.
And he hasn't fired anybody. He hasn't.
This is what I'm saying.
Anybody, is he?
Heads don't roll. Even if it's not the fault of the head of that agency, if his head rolls, the next person that will take up already knows that you don't even have to. It doesn't even have to be your fault for your head to roll. Not to talk of when it's your fault. Therefore, you need to sit up to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. The Minister of Interior is going to still be there. Maybe the head of the prisons services will still be there, the correctional services. Very, very likely he will still be there. We won't be surprised if he doesn't leave. The head of the prison itself that was attacked is still going to be there.
Yeah, I think, quite frankly, that the president doesn't have the capacity to manage the complexity and the interactions that we've had that we currently have in Nigeria. Capacity, I'm not talking about his mental capacity, but he doesn't have the capacity to deliver. If you recall, there was a time during, I keep making reference to OBJ, not because he was a perfect example, or not because he's a perfect example, but in the scheme of things, he did considerably better than most others who succeeded him. I remember when we were having frequent air crash in Nigeria, Obasanjo convened a meeting of experts and local stakeholders to find a way to deal with this issue and deal with it in a lasting way. And of course, we could see that our airspace has enjoyed some level of safety. Those are based on, the capacity built from then. You could see him move. I remember watching that event live. Obasanjo was standing for more than 6-7 hours. He moderated that event. I hope we can find it on YouTube. people will come. I remember one pastor saying, we should pray for. He said, my friend, if you don't have anything to say, sit down. We've been praying. You know.
Really?
Oh yeah.
The airlines meeting. The one you referred to.
Yeah. I think you can find it on YouTube. It was. He stood for 6-7 hours. Even experts from outside the shores of the country.
Yeah.
He listened to everyone. People were taken down, and he asked questions on how to chart a new frontier in a bid to finding a lasting panacea to the whole thing. And of course, we saw a dramatic improvement. You could remember during Obasanjo's time, there were frequent.
Yeah, but I was still disappointed with some of the people he appointed ministers of aviation.
Well, like Fanika,
I would agree with you, but what I'm trying to see is that he wrote.
I didn't want to call names, and this other woman from Imo State. No.
Well,
come on.
He rose up to the challenge, in my opinion. And there were, there was looking at where we were and where we are currently. You could see there was, very pronounced change and improvement.
Okay.
So that is what I mean in this context. Capacity. This president has he convened any national security summit? Has he? Despite experts, voicing out their opinion and dishing out an avalanche of information, he's never done that. All he comes is to tweet, and we need more than this.
Yeah, he comes to Twitter. It's not even him coming on Twitter. Yeah. I think it's just one guy, somewhere.
We need more than this.
We just type something and write and send.
A former general who has been so abysmal with security. At this point, I'm just thinking that his military record was just fraud. All those things that we had about. Yeah, he's a fraud. That's the truth. That and then he doesn't even care. Like, he doesn't even show the slightest attempt to rescue Nigeria. Like, I know you can't do everything, right, but just put the right people.
He doesn't
give them the motivation, or punish them, or remove them if they don't perform. He just doesn't care.
I think he's helpless. I think, and this is why I use the word.
I don't think he is. I think he just doesn't care. That's what I think.
Then that would amount to being intentional in punishment.
No, not even because of his body language or anything. His body language shows that he doesn't care. But I don't want to attribute it to his body language, because sometimes you can misinterpret people. There are people that just don't know how to show emotions. So if you look at them, you think they don't care. They no send you. You understand? They look aloof. They look taciturn. Yeah, this guy looks taciturn, and his body language just shows he doesn't care. But I'm not even reading too much into that. What I'm reading is his actions. You look at the actions. You look at it's like someone always says, if you're going to, how can you want to go to Ibadan, but you're facing Badagry? You understand? So your action is that you're facing Badagry. There's no way you're going to get to Ibadan. So that is it for me. If I look at the government and they say, we want to take Nigeria here and there, but the actions show that they are going somewhere else. That's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
So I think for him, he doesn't care that we're going to Badagry instead of Ibadan. It's and also because he's not going to come on national TV to defend why our car is moving in this other direction. He's not going to defend it. I think that there are some personal interests of his, that are being served. By some of these things that are going on in the country. That's what I think. It might not be financial. But I think there's something. There's a personal interest that is being served.
Maybe, your concluding part of your statement makes it a bit believable, because unless I wouldn't, it will make me wonder why someone would just not care, unless there is a stake someone has by, seeing the system in such a disequilibrium. Otherwise, you would care, at least for the sake of posterity, even considering that the current president attempted several times to run for the highest office and cried on the national television in his desperate attempt to cling, to get the mandate, and never got it, and got it finally, and it's just about clueless. It defies common sense. For me, it's unbelievable. It's unimaginable that, I think he dashed the hope of, people who supported him.
I think that for his body language, I always believed for a long time now, since I watched him for over a year as president. I've kind of believed that his body language is because he's incompetent. He just wants to feel like he wants to show swag. So that for him he's showing no emotion, just to throw people off, to think that he knows things are under control. So that his body language, I feel, is just because he's clueless. And then of course, I agree. If you watch things that are happening in the country, for instance, look at the speed with which people like Nnamdi Kanu were apprehended. Absolutely. You can see that our security and intelligence really
they work.
Have one or two things in their sleeves, right? Up their sleeves, right? So you look at how Supreme Court justices were deposed and arrested overnight. All those things.
Yeah.
It's easy for them to. I mean, do you know what it means to go against Supreme Court justices? But corrupt politicians are still chilling.
One more example.
Yeah.
Back in the day when he was military head of state, remember the guy?
Omar
Diko. Yeah. The guy, that the government wanted, the guy had run away. Was put in a crate, some Gestapo style things.
Yeah.
You understand? Showing that he has superintended over that sort of system before, where security agencies actually know how to get stuff done.
Yeah, but then again, there was a personal undertone to that story. So
now, it might also still key to what I was saying about some personal what is it that is being served by how things are in the country.
I really agree with you, because your premise, or your premise is one sensible premise to consider, because what else could it be? How else could you justify it if
there are things that they have no explanation.
Because
you look at what's going on.
I try to. And so sometimes I have this goosebump, like when I think about it, like how can this be? I find it difficult to really comprehend how. For example, someone tweeted, of course, I'm not sure about this information, but I believe it anyway, that Nigeria has access to this Pegasus software owned by Israel, so they can use to spy your phone, spy your system, Pegasus software. So, which that the DSS has access to that resource. Remember, they've used those systems to infiltrate heads of government around the world, let alone Nigeria, if we can acquire it. Of course, it's a privately owned business in Israel, of course, used by the government of Israel. So Nigeria can also acquire that resource because they want money. So let's make a conjecture that we have access to that resource. It means they can use that system to infiltrate, people's facilities, equipment, phones, and stuff like that. Even adding on top of the fact that the current Minister for Information has, asked Nigerians, has computed a large sum of database of Nigerians to manage, one of the reasons for, getting this information is to help contribute in managing the security architecture of the country. So putting everything together, what is going on? Is it that, it just doesn't make sense that we cannot use or deploy these resources? Then just oppose it to what you talked about Nnamdi Kanu. It shows that, something is missing here. There is something that doesn't add up. if they could get Nnamdi Kanu, tracking him when he left UK to Kenya, right? Monitoring him over a long period of time and getting hold of him and bringing him back to Nigeria. Doing this to justices and other people that we may not even be privy to. You know, I mean, something doesn't add up here. Something doesn't add up here.
Yeah, because if you think about it, even so, for him, they say he's not corrupt, he doesn't take money and all that. Okay, yeah. But even presidents, that are getting kickbacks, dipping their hands into the treasury of the country, they are still interested in their country at least surviving.
Exactly.
Do you understand? This guy looks like he's not interested in the country really surviving, whether it is insecurity or unity. Like he doesn't care if the country is unified. Like he's allergic to unity. There's something, if these people are united.
For instance, for instance, now we're talking about mob justice. When this lady in the north was killed by, people who, by schoolmates, this is it Deborah?
Yeah.
The lady in school, she went to the WhatsApp group to tell her classmates, to stop posting religious stuff so that they can concentrate on studying. And they mobbed her and killed her with video.
Really?
With just 3 months ago, with camera and videos showing their faces. So it's not even that they killed her in broad daylight and they videoed it. It was all over social media. Our Oga Buhari never said anything.
Nothing.
And then in the south, some weeks later, an innocent woman, a northern woman with her 3 children, was murdered by some people. Whether it's who did that was very gruesome. That was a very gruesome murder of a young woman and her kids. Buhari went and started posting immediately about. I agree with that. Nobody should feel unsafe, whether you're a northerner, in the south or a southerner in the north. But he always does this thing that he shows as if that
people one side against the other
every
side.
time. I like what he did when that lady in the south was killed, the northern lady. But why don't you do the same thing, especially when this thing happens mostly in the north where Christians are killed? He just doesn't care. And then he waits for an opportunity to show that he is biased. Like, I don't understand what goes in. He doesn't care about his name.
No, that's a good point. He's looking for an opportunity to show that he's biased.
Exactly.
That's
so you wonder how this guy hoodwinked us, how this guy became, in quotes, a statesman. You wonder how this guy.
No, statesman. Something that we must also. Sorry that I'm interjecting.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that we don't get. If you look at the Aristotelian definition of elitism or statesmanship, it has nothing to do with the way we characterize these words these days. These politicians are not statesmen. There are attributes of a statesman. There are attributes of, they say, political elites. There are attributes. So I want us also not to join that bandwagon by saying, the political elites. They're not elites in the context. They're just political jobbers.
No,
if you want to understand, let us use these words as intellectuals will use it, and in line with Aristotelian definition of statesman. So he's not a statesman. A statesman will care about his legacy, about his country.
And he had every opportunity to
so
be.
much more. Look at Obasanjo. I would consider Obasanjo a statesman. Obasanjo was one of the leading thoughts about thought force, which somehow precipitously manifested through PWB. It's not like he.
That's what I'm hearing. Though. That's what I'm hearing. Yes. Maybe we'll discuss.
Obasanjo has always talked about thought force. Remember when he wrote his first and second manifestos that was rubbish by the current government? He knew that these people didn't have any listening ears, and the worst thing that could happen to a man is to think that you're a monopoly of knowledge, or that you are above anyone advising or instructing you. It is a recipe for disaster, and we could see that manifest here. These guys are not listening; they're always defending. I don't believe in that. I think we'll have our inadequacies, our limitations. But what makes knowledge is not knowing everything, but knowing who to know from. I may not know anything, but if you know who to know from and you're able to listen to them, even the Holy Book says that where there is abundance of knowledge, things are done correctly. But when you're not listening, all you do is attack those who want to advise you. You cannot succeed, and it's so revealing in this administration. So, just to sum up my points, he's not a statesman. He doesn't have what it takes to be a statesman, and he should not be characterized as one. He will end up in his own unique place in history, and I believe history and posterity will be the best parameter to judge this individual who is managing the affairs of this country. I think he will be judged, at least by posterity. Anyway,
You know what? I think we've gone from Kuje/security. We've talked about the people in the media circles in government.
Yeah.
We've talked about the people in government itself. There's just so much to talk about. I think we should just continue tomorrow. Okay. So, Omar, make we adjourn this meeting.